This holiday.
You're gonna get us into terrible trouble.
His child, who then wants to escape this abusive home life and finds joy in Freddy's, sees an animatronic or just a Freddy's character outside his window. This is very likely to be William, whether in a cloth suit like we see in Help Wanted or in his Springlock suit. Now, I know it's raining in Midnight Motorist, but my argument is that in the previous section, in the real gameplay section actually called Midnight Motorist, not the section that we call Later That Night, but in Midnight Motorist, it is not raining. There's really no indication of when it started raining or when it didn't, and so the fact that William could have been out in his Springlock suit outside the kid's window does not mean that the Springlocks would have triggered, because we don't know if it was raining when the kid escaped. Anyway, so William sees this kid at Freddy, sees that he has an abusive home life, thinks he's an easy target for kidnapping, walks over to the guy's house, and then he does exactly what Toy Chica describes in UCN.
I told him to come over later. That should be enough. And if he doesn't show up, I'll just go to his house. And if he doesn't open the door, I'll just find a window.
Lures the kid outside, takes him to Freddy's, kills him, stuffs him in a suit. The point of the story would be to add context and lore to what at the time was the final game in the series. We saw Susie getting kidnapped, we saw Charlie's death, but from a more detailed perspective, and also to clarify that Charlie was a girl, which is of course a retcon from FNAF 2, and now we are once again seeing another MCI victim. William went to his house, he dresses in costume to lure kids out, and he picks on kids who are emotionally damaged, or at the time are very susceptible to a adult figure who is trying to provide them joy. He finds Susie because she's sad that her dog dies. He finds this kid because he comes from an abusive household. My main issue with grand sweeping theories about lore revelations for the whole series, like the one that FNAF made, is that I don't think it makes sense for Scott to have used this one little mini-game to tell us that the crying child is a robot. It's not that I think it's possible, and it's not that I totally see how those pieces of evidence fit together, which I do, and I really like that video. Personally, I just like to go into the story assuming that Scott is a competent storyteller, and there's no way that he would use a mini-game in, again, what at the time was going to be the final game of the series, to drop us some significant lore information. I really think that it's only giving us some background info. And yes, I am kind of just assuming that FNAF 6 was supposed to be the end of the series. I don't think Scott ever intended it to be the end of the franchise, but it was wrapping up the story that had been told thus far. It was wrapping up loose ends. I don't think wrapping up loose ends involves including details that totally throw our entire understanding of the series out of whack. I really think that this small mini-game only included a small detail for us to learn about the backstory, which is, here's how one of the MCI victims went missing. As I pointed out in my other video, the mound of dirt in the woods is on a patch of ground that very much is in the shape of a house with a porch. This is, of course, a very odd detail, but I think that this is meant to help us place where this is in the timeline. We know that William Afton owned 2 houses. There's the one that we see in the mini-games in FNAF 4, which is like right by Fredbear's, and theoretically would be the one that William was in before any of his children died, and therefore before him and his wife divorced, which is the main theory that people have for what happened to Mrs. Acton. And then we know that he ends up in a different house later. That's the one that we play as the nighttime gameplay of FNAF 4, a house that has a completely different layout to the one in the mini-games. So at some point, William Afton owned 2 different houses. I think that this clearing in this woods, where they are clearly building something house-shaped with a mound of dirt in the ground, is implying that they are breaking ground on this construction of this new house. That firmly places the events of Midnight Motorist and later that night, sometime after FNAF 4, because it would have been after the divorce, but not so long in the future that Sister Location would have happened, because of course, the bunker for Sister Location is underneath William's second house. So I think that this tiny little insignificant detail in the minigame is a tiny little insignificant detail in the story of the entire franchise. All it's doing is saying this took place post-Acton divorce, so post-FNAF 4, but then before Sister Location, which, of course, is when the MCI happened. There's other details that obviously theorists like to look at that I personally think are just coincidences, like the fact that the rain graphic, both in the Security Puppet minigame and in Later That Night, are the same. I think that's just Scott reusing an asset. In the Security Puppet minigame, there's tire tracks leading away from Charlie's body. I think that's just because, as you see in FNAF 2, William drives away in his car. I think that's just more evidence to show us that this is the same event that we saw in FNAF 2. I don't think that that's a clue that this happens, and then because then we see Orange Guy in a car later, that necessarily follows that. The fact that the minigame's called Later That Night, people like to say it would be after Charlie's death, but I don't think that that's a huge lore hint. I expressed this opinion in my very long video, that I think that the main gameplay section is Midnight Motorist, and thus it takes place at midnight, and that the minigame that happens right afterwards, being called Later That Night, is later from Midnight Motorist. It is after midnight on that same night. You have Orange Guy speeding down the highway, and then you have him going home. So it is later that night. And then Junior's is just a bar that he got kicked out of because he met the local limit and got drunk. And if I stopped here, this video would be called Solving Midnight Motorist, and there would be a very clickbaity thumbnail with like a circle around Orange Guy, and then like an arrow to like one of the kids' corpses. But that's not what we're doing, because unfortunately, one of my commenters in my very long Five Nights at Freddy's video ruins Midnight Motorist for me forever. Now, as I've said a couple times, I think that Scott, in fact, does do coincidences. The very oftenly quoted sentiment in the fandom that Scott doesn't do coincidences comes from one of MatPat's videos after FNAF 3, and I think that that is just not the case. I think that things like colors lining up or names lining up can be used as good evidence, but occasionally you just have to keep in mind that details are going to overlap. I think that the community was spot on with Baby's eye color changing once she became possessed by Elizabeth. But that does not mean that anything that's green in the series is associated with Elizabeth. Most people have come to the understanding that the 3 different characters in the franchise named Jeremy are not the same person. So like, people are cool with it being a coincidence that 3 unrelated people are named Jeremy, but for some reason they're not cool with the fact that it raining in 2 different minigames is just a coincidence. The Midnight Motorist car is purple, so it must be William. Which just, to me, is so odd, because then Orange Guy is not purple. But this video exists neither for me to state my own theory, nor for me to try to disprove other people's. Because at the end of the day, you know what they say, it's merely a hypothesis. It's just an observation. So, what is the issue that I found that completely throws all Midnight Motorist theories out of whack? Well, as I said, some things in Scott's storytelling are coincidences, but other things are not, and they are very specific hints. And I cannot help but realize that the Aftons are British. I personally think this was a phenomenal choice by Scott, because it immediately allows us to know that whenever a character is speaking with a British accent, that it's an Afton. We don't need Mike to say, "Father, it's me, Michael," because the moment that he's speaking in a British accent, we know that he's related to William. Same thing with the little girl Elizabeth in Sister Location. The issue is that in Midnight Motorist, the cars are driving on the left side of the road, which is not just a minor detail. Scott could have had it be anything. He could have had the cars driving up and down, but he specifically made the game so that the cars are driving on the left side of the road, and the Aftons are British, meaning that whether or not Orange Guy is William or is just some other random character, this minigame is British. If we're taking this super seriously, if Scott doesn't do coincidences, then the events of Midnight Motorist and later that night happen in England. There's no discussion or evidence within the series about, like, hey, Afton grew up in England and then moved to America. We just know he has a British accent. There's no indication of when this move might have occurred. But if the events of later that night are happening in England, then suddenly this opens up the possibility that the escaped child out the window is William as a kid, that Orange Guy is William's father, which of course makes sense because if the Aftons are going to be depicted as like little blocky guys that are one solid color, it makes sense for Michael's grandfather, William's father, to also be a blocky guy that's one solid color, but he can't be purple because William's purple, so he's orange. And it also makes sense for William to come from a broken home because he's kind of a messed up guy. And I'm not saying I believe this. I'm not saying that this is fact or that I'm going to go forward and build timelines off of this conclusion. But just opening up the possibilities and looking at the detail that the cars are driving on the left makes me wonder and try to follow down the thought process that Orange Guy is William's father, and this is depicting William escaping from his abusive home life when he's a child. What's the mound in the woods in that scenario? I don't know. What's the animatronic footsteps outside the window? I don't know. Personally, I think one of the bigger flaws in FNAF theorizing is people who try to fit every single detail into one theory. Like there needs to be some overarching theory of everything to explain every single little detail. Personally, I think that looking at a small detail in something depicted in the games and not knowing what it means might actually lead to more discoveries than just sort of shoehorning things into it to make sure that you cover all of your bases. Like every video that I make, this is not intended to like draw conclusions about anything. It's just like stupid ideas I come up with that I am hoping other people in the community take and run with. Ozone, ID's Fantasy, and MatPat have basically already stated that they're not going to watch my really long video. But I really hope that at least one of the other FNAF tubers watches this and adds on their ideas, because at the end of the day, I'm not an expert in this topic. I've never read any of the books. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm just here with a fresh perspective spitting out ideas. So thank you for watching. I do not intend on turning this channel into a Five Nights at Freddy's theory channel, but I will of course be uploading more videos basically whenever new ideas come to me. There's going to be a lot of non-FNAF videos in the near future, so if you like the way that I tell stories and articulate things, maybe you can check those out. And remember, the R in Freddy's stands for respect. So don't go spamming or yelling at any other theory channels. Thank you for watching. Still trying to work on that ending bit, but I think it's a good start.
clarify. There's a good double leg, not illegal here, though, sir. There's no Fresno. He's back.
Great way to find trendy heartfelt gifts for loved ones is actually through the Google Holiday 100 list. The list, yeah.
Elbow here. Right there. Hands right there, that takedown. Now here, right, you see Perez. Come on in for Black's on the cover. Yeah, right, he wants to stay in the middle of the track. So Hunt in the corner by Saul. Escamilla in the corner to Perez, and now Hunt will time out. Now this one, they've got to focus on that right hand. He's a one-handed fighter right now. I'm not sure what he's about. Coming forward. Little turn for Perez. Fluid on the outside. Forcing it looks like she Perez is a one-handed fighter. And waiting for Perez. Perez again pointing to the center circle. As the minutes continue. I have to think about it.
Unbandled.
Over with the right hand to the inside. Big right hand on the inside for Russell. Southpaw stands, big exhales, he comes forward. Perez. Chest circling out. 5 seconds away. Right here you can see much more aggressive right now. All right, guys, on 2. 1, 2, oh no! no chance of winning. This was just a blazing start. I got bad bitches by my side, and these bitches spot. I've been blowing gabbers, la la la. I'm so fucking hot, I turn up the heat. Oh yeah, I turn up the fire. Hard headed, young nigga, I always knew I was gon' get mine. Never hated no nigga, I was chillin', way on my time. Look up, had the feeling, I'm throwing cash up just like gas signs. Cut the flash off when you take the pictures, diamonds still the same. Yeah, bitch. Diamonds still fit. Buzzing off that drink last night. I woke up and I see the pills. Off white tags. Look like that fake cost me a meal ticket. And I'm here to stay. You don't like it, nigga, deal with it. Yeah, bitch. Diamonds still hit. Buzzing off that drink last night. I woke up and I see the pills. Off white tags. Look like that fake cost me a meal ticket. And I'm here to stay. You don't like it, nigga, deal with it. Bank attention. Let me show you how to get these bill tickets. Tears not to mention. Whip it out, and she still kiss. Kiss it down the dish. Cross the rock, it's that real glitz. Run up in my safe, where I check. And I'm still sprint. Pepper keys talk, body talk. I'm a crab walk, bitch stop me. Always got the most to speak on. Buzzing off that drink. Too bad, bitch, they tryna hit on me. Yeah, bitch, diamonds still hit. Buzzing off that drink last night. I woke up and I still fit. Off white tags. Look like the fit cost me a meal ticket. And I'm here to stay. You don't like it, nigga, deal with it. Yeah, bitch, diamonds still hit. Buzzing off that drink last night. I woke up and I still feel it. Yo, pay close attention. Let me show you how to get these real tickets. Tears not to mention. Whipped it out, and she still kissing. Into diamond dish, cops on rock. This that real glitz. Run up in my safe, where I check up, and I'm still sprint. Pepper keys talk, money talk, and still fit. I'm a crab walk, bitch stop. I'm about and it's on the worst who did the least. We always got the most to speak on. Buzzing off that track. Too bad, bitch, they tryna hit on me. Yeah, bitch, diamonds still hit. Buzzing off that drink last night. I woke up and I still feel it. Off white tags. Look like the fit cost me a meal ticket. And I'm here to stay. You don't like it, nigga, deal with it. Yeah, bitch, diamonds still hit. Buzzing off that drink last night. I woke up and I still feel it. Off white tags. Look like the fit cost me a meal ticket. And I'm here to stay. You don't like it, nigga, deal with it. You must be out of your head. Leave me for dead. You must be out of your head. Smoking on diamonds. Baby, on diamonds. Smoking on diamonds. You already know what time it is. I put stones off it. That's a full fledged. That's a royal flush. I make grandmaster plans that are complex. Cash on land and it's all flush. Stripes on my jeans, they decided to cut it. Black, red, and yellow bitches on Jamaica. Got the streets from the land, like I smoke his ass. Religions on my ass, like I dance for cash. Every time $20 bills in a stash. Oh, like an athlete, I'm falling back. Oh, shit is cool, she just Juliet. Can that bitch tell my shit they cost a couple bands? How you gon' give me all red? You must be out of your head. You be so dead. You must be out of your head. Whiskey on diamonds. Better be okay in dollars. Whiskey on diamonds. You already know what time it is. I put stones on friends. That's a full flex. And then I always tell that's a royal flush. I make grandmaster plans that are complex. Drop some cash on land and it's all flush. I got royal blood. Put down your protect, now that's a cold blood. I just shit on my ex, now that's a royal blood. Fighting on that bitch, that bill was going so. I was a broke down, I'm in the ghost. She say I'm a drug, I can't let it go. I was vaccinated like a hoe. That mean they even colder than before. I got a straw, my church. Money was for the show. Eeny, meeny, money, mo. I flew a bitch to two below. Hello? Leave me on red. You must be out of your head. Leave me for dead. You must be out of your head. Swisky or diamonds. Better be your prima donnas. Swisky or diamonds. You already know what time it is. I put stones on fans, that's a full flex. Hand to hand, I was tail, that's a royal flush. I make grandmaster plans that are complex. Drop some cash on land and it's all flush.
This is discovered by one of my commenters. The thumbnail for it is awful. One of the most common requests I get on my way too long, but still somehow not long enough, Five Nights at Freddy's video is to take all the theories that are embedded deep within its 9-hour runtime and make individual videos going more into depth on them. And so you don't need to skip 6 hours into the video to learn what Chiba's favorite kind of pizza is. That's a joke, I don't actually talk about that in the video. And obviously everybody knows what her favorite kind of pizza is. It's chicken. The signs have been there from the beginning. Chica is a cannibal. Anyway, as much as I recognize the need to really make a series on this, I've decided I don't really want to do it unless I have something to add to my original theory. A couple days ago, I released a Midnight Voters video in which I went over new evidence that had been discovered by one of my commenters. The thumbnail for it is awful. And so what I really wanted to talk about in this video is just what basically the thumbnail says. It's not something I directly state in the video, but I have a different interpretation of Golden Duo than most of the community does. Golden Duo is the theory that there are in fact two souls within Golden Freddy. That would be Cassidy / Vengeful Spirit / Andrew, and then the Crying Child. The evidence for this really comes from the Fazbear Frights novels. There's an ongoing epilogue called The Stitch Wraith, and in that, two different souls inhabit the same
hook right there. Okay, buddy.
Being a little angrier.
Okay, buddy.
These attributes then grafted onto what we know about Cece and the Vengeful Spirit. So the theory is that both of those entities within the game lore are attached to the Golden Freddy suit, and I disagree. Since we're using book lore at the moment, I think that we should really dive a little deeper into the Silver Eyes trilogy. The big twist reveal in that series is that Charlie is a robot. But like everything else in this franchise, that is such a simplification. Because Charlie's not actually a robot. Charlie is a possessed doll. This is symbolic about how she has absolutely no agency in the story and is just other people's plaything. A completely passive protagonist who loses all need to actually be within the narrative. And her father Henry built some robots with the idea being that if you take the doll and physically place it within the robot, then the robot will come to life. So somehow the doll is possessing Charlie's soul, but then this allows her to do things like see through the eyes of the robot, feel touches with the robot, but the doll is her. When the doll moves to a different body, her soul then possesses that body. And I think there's a direct correlation to this within the game's canon, and that would be the Fredbear plush from FNAF 4 in Sister Location. It's the last thing that is by Cece as he actually dies, assuming that the manner of Charlie possessing the puppet we see in Pizzeria Simulator has something to do with how souls actually latch on to animatronics and has to be within their proximity. Then it makes a lot of sense to me that Cece's soul would possess the plush. I have an extremely complicated theory about how the plush in FNAF 4 minigames is actually Cece possessing it, and that the Cece we play as in the FNAF 4 minigames is not actually Cece, it is in fact Cassidy, and that all she's doing is playing a video game, but I'm not going to touch on that now. One of the typical signs of possession within the Five Nights at Freddy's universe is, of course, having little white dots glowing in your eyes, as we can distinctly see in Sister Location on William's desk. This is probably one of the most talked about ore drops from merch existing, but the fact is that that plush, when it was sold as actual real-life merch, was labeled as a possessed item. So Cece is possessing the Fredbear plush. Golden Freddy, meanwhile, seems to be possessed by the Vengeful Spirit or by the 5th MCI kid. And there's a heavy implication that the puppet had nothing to do with this 5th child coming to inhabit Golden Freddy. The main theory for this in the fandom being that because the child was killed within a Springlock suit, that for some reason the agony of this happening actually allowed them to latch onto the suit easier than the other kids who were killed nearby their animatronics and then had their bodies stuffed. So they all needed the puppet's help, but Golden Freddy didn't. Golden Freddy is more powerful and angry. In Ultimate Custom Night, which is generally believed to be William's punishment in the afterlife, CC is represented by the actual Fredbear animatronic. He repeats lines to William that he himself heard in FNAF 4, like being put back together, knowing who his friends are, etc. In the game, there is no representation of the fifth MCI child, the vengeful spirit Cassidy, etc. Except for at the end of the game when you see Golden Freddy twitching away into the distance. So you have two different human child characters who are associated with the Fredbear/Golden Freddy animatronic character. And so the idea was taken from the Stitch Wraith storyline in the books that both of their souls are inhabiting the one Golden Freddy suit. This would make sense as to why that character would state things like, "It's me," when talking to Mike, because Mike is, of course, CC's older brother. Now, the thumbnail and title of this video are no lie. I do not believe both souls are inhabiting the Golden Freddy suit. And that's because I think CC is in the Fredbear plush, and I think the Fredbear plush is in the Golden Freddy suit. Golden Freddy is a suit technically, it's a Springlock suit, so arguably there are animatronics within it, and Cassidy is possessing that suit. CC is then possessing the suit in the same manner that Charlie possesses her robots in the Silver Eyes novel. He is a doll that is then placed within a robot that has control over that robot. So while I think that as far as games are concerned, both of them do have some sort of...
Yeah, totally.
I don't think that CC
Totally.
is possessing a suit.
Totally.
More credence to the idea that
Totally.
two versions of Fredbear, the purple one and the black one, with CC representing the purple version, because that's what the plush was actually in his. I wanted to sort of unassociate that version of so it really does imply that there's a visible suit somewhere. And the existence of a visible suit might give the opportunity for the CC plush to be removed from it visibly at some point. You don't necessarily need to have Happy's Day to have CC's consciousness removed from the Golden Freddy suit. It can be removed by other means, which to me makes it a possibility, maybe not something that's plausible, but a possibility that in different entries in the franchise, CC either does or does not have control over the Golden Freddy suit. The Golden Freddy suit doesn't say, "It's me" in FNAF 2, and it almost actively is hostile towards the nighttime security guards in that game. FNAF 1, it just crashes the game when you look at it too much. FNAF 2 is basically flies down the hallway, theoretically implying that he is actually killing the guard. Now, without my theory, you'd have to say that CC is present within the Withered version of Golden Freddy, because obviously that game takes place in 1987, and he would have possessed the suit sometime around 1983, theoretically when his head was actually bitten by the suit. But with my theory, that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. The Golden Freddy suit and character can be antagonistic without CC being implicated in that violence. This sort of spins off into a whole other theory. I think that Gendo, the secret character from Sister Location, who has a very similar naming convention to Yellow Bear, which is what Golden Freddy was called in FNAF 1. I think that Gendo has some sort of relationship with the Golden Freddy character. Obviously, it's not one-to-one or direct, and there's a lot of holes in it, given that Gendo's endoskeleton looks a lot more like the advanced one-time animatronics, rather than the extremely old endos that would have been in the Springlock suit back in 1983. But I do think there is some sort of connection between Gendo and then Yellow Bear. And since Gendo has absolutely no story significance in Sister Location, I think that his presence in the game might be to physically grab the CC-possessed Fredbear plush from William's office. I think that when Cassidy possessed Golden Freddy and before CC's plush was physically placed within the suit is when the conversation within the security logbook happened. CC doesn't really have all his memories together. He's like, can't see. and the party was for him. So my theory would be that sort of like that partial scatter victim, whatever the theory is called, that partial version of CC was kind of left behind after the big chomping incident, but that the rest of his soul, the rest of his memories are within the flesh. And so they have a little conversation in the logbook. Cassidy walks on over on the floor with the endoskeleton physically down to the sister location bunker, grabs the plush, goes and puts it in the suit, and now they can share the body. Why is the Golden Freddy suit lit and clearly in performer mode, not animatronic mode, and Cassidy has control over the endo? I have no idea. Like I said, lots of holes. But I don't think that the existence of the suit Easter egg is
Right, using sprint burst and he's still able to hit me. Right, makes a lot of sense.
sister location.
Look at how close these hooks are. Look at how close these hooks are. This is sad. This is ridiculous. This is sad. This is sad.
I missed something somewhere along the way. How do I get out of this hell hole?
Slightly. Pussy.
Right. We're in the deep end now.
Game is truly pathetic, bro. Like, just the fact how, like putrid oak and freaking petrified oak is literally, like, those two perks describes how this whole game is in general, bro. Like, it's literally one-sided. Thought it stays on slightly increased. Petrified oak calms the entity and slightly increases, yet you go to putrid oak, the entity considerably decrease. Look, you see how they gotta freaking put a limit to survivor shit just cause it's survivors and there's 4 of us. But you know. So literally, if you offer petrified oak and the killer offers putrid oak, there was literally no point of you even offering petrified oak, because literally there's still, like, I just played a match, and that's exactly what happened. I didn't even have that map offering. I just so happened to have a teammate who had it, and then the killer had one, and then literally there were still hooks all around right next to each other, bro. It's like it does not, like, look, see, this game is so one-sided, and yet these niggas still cry and bitch and complain, bro. These niggas still be talking about, oh, y'all need to update this, y'all need to nerf this, y'all need to balance this, bro. Shit, talking about balancing. Literally, killer's got every advantage already, bro. There is no need for no damn updates. It's pathetic. Niggas gotta literally rely and depend on the devs. They gotta rely on the devs to alter and change the game to their standards. It's literally sad and pathetic. Bro, what is going on? What is this? Bro, do y'all see this, bro? This game is clip.